Okay, now we are in 19th century, the beginning of the modernity of modernism. And we're in chapter 16 on our textbook, Modernity and Identity in East Asian Art. Modernity and identity. Well, modernity, when it came to China, it didn't came to China in a very glamorous fashion. It came to China around the time when the Qing dynasty, the Qing imperial dynasty, was faltering with pressures from outside, that France, countries from Europe who's opened a maritime trade route across the world. Countries like Spain, like Portuguese, when they occupied or colonized Latin America. And then we have other countries like the English, the French, the American, Russian, Japanese. All these countries, they started to come to China and ask for expanding the trading business with them. At the time, the Qing dynasty was still closing off all their ports to just keep things themselves at the time, and it's faltering. From inside, we have the rebellion, the Taiping Tianguo, what they call the heavenly rebellion, troops who challenged the regime, that challenged the Qing court, the Qing army. And from outside, we have all these different countries, 8 of them, trying to invade, trying to come to China and benefit their trade. And they even started what we call the Opium War. The first Opium War, the second Opium War, to sell the opium to the Chinese people as a way, rather extreme way, to expand their business, their trading with this area. And that's how China met modernity. It was forced to meet the identity, was forced to accept the modernity. For example, all these countries, when they came to China, they brought different things, new technology, for example, that were developed. For example, photography, that was still quite new, right? Photography was officially invented in France in 1839 by Daguerre, right? He announced in the French Academy of Art, the Academy of Science. And then later was used, and later it was brought to China in this case. And specifically, if we zoom in a little bit to just one city to look at this confusion of when China meeting the modernity, we come to this city called Shanghai. Shanghai is still nowadays a burgeoning and one of the, or actually the biggest cosmopolitan city in China right now, and even in the world. But at the time, it was the city. It was one of the front line for which all these new technologies, these new fashions, all these new people, right, new faces from all these European countries. All these things met the Chinese population. The intellectual thoughts, the new intellectual thoughts, the new creative work, all this new diversity, new entertainment methods, everything new happened or was brought to Shanghai. Against the background with all this rebellion, trying to fighting, and the Qing army fighting this rebellion, countries, foreign countries trying to invade and force the Qing court to open the port. their trading relationship. So pretty passively, pretty involuntarily accepting this modernity, right? Why do I talk about this abstruse things, modernity? What is modernity? I have this hanging scroll right here for us to discuss. That may provide a little bit of answer to that. A quick review of the medium, the Chinese medium that we have the fan, the album leaves, right? The very traditional Chinese mediums, artistic mediums. They can paint on album leaves, right? Just for maybe one literati and a friend viewing privately, album leaf, and then after viewing store it away for next time, until next time. Album leaf, we have the hanging scroll, which is this one right here that hangs on the wall, not necessarily to be decorative, not necessarily has to be decorating some kind of surface, but for more public viewing, right? So that you pass by, you can see it. People from further away, they can see it's more public environment, meant to be more public environment. And if, for example, we have the Qianlong, the portrait, right? Since we're talking about a portrait, Ren Xiong's self-portrait, then we can kind of compare and contrast with Qianlong, the emperor, Qing emperor, Qianlong's portrait, right? Meant to be hang on the wall, hanging scroll. So album leaf, hanging scroll. We have hand scroll, also for more private viewing. And fan painting. You can paint on the fan. That's and that's more interesting one, because if you paint on the fan, then you can it's portable. You carry with you. That's one thing. And then and sometimes the fan is not necessarily as an object to be carried with the owner. It's a fan that's glued to an album leaf or glued to a surface. So we have all these 4 different mediums. That's a review of Chinese traditional painting mediums. Back to this hanging scroll. Against that background, was painted 1850, right after the first Opium War. Because Shanghai, because Ren Xiong was spent a lot of time in Shanghai, although this painting believed to be painted not in Shanghai but in Zhejiang's further south of Shanghai, in his hometown, but he's active in Shanghai and even be included into what people called the Shanghai School of Artists. So he's very active in Shanghai, and Shanghai at the time was forced to open as a treaty port, because after first Opium War, this treaty that the Chinese government had to sign with the foreign countries to open and be pressed, right? To have to agree to open this treaty ports to do trades, to trade opium. The Shanghai opened as a treaty port in 1842. And then Ren Xiong painted this. What do you notice? This is a self-portrait. First of all, we don't see that many self-portraits in Chinese art history, do we? Well, because I brought up this one, the emperor, the Qianlong, the Qing dynasty emperor, Qianlong emperor's portrait was painted by this missionary, by this Italian artist who traveled to China, Giuseppe Castiglione, favored by the emperor himself, and painted the portrait for the emperor, aiming to bolster his image, the emperor's glorious image. There's a function, there's a political function to it, to make the emperor look good, to idealize the emperor, right, with this portrait. But what's the point of doing a self-portrait? You want to express something that's of your own, right? That you want to you was kind of like writing a prose writing to express some of your feeling, but visually, in the case of self-portrait. Then we look at this self-portrait, which is a bit interesting. Well, you see, let's describe it a little bit, right? The robe slip down a little bit, showing the shoulder of this little skinny, lean, or maybe a monk because it's shaved. The artist himself, with this really big, bulky robe and really big, bulky shoes, and it gives you the illusion that you're looking from down there, looking up, right, to the figure, because it's bigger at the bottom, bulkier at the bottom, and then skinny, or then kind of like a obelisk, right, pointing up. So he's probably a monk, right? Head short, to give off his status, maybe a monk. He's a monk. He's educated. He's a literati. At least he's pursued the things that literatis would pursue: the poetry, painting. Just like in this case, right? This is the poetry. Actually, it's using the Kunqi format, a traditional drama format at the time in China. So he's employing that kind of format to write his poem. And then he's with a very steady, very piercing, very penetrating gaze, looking out of the picture frame, right? This is what we call the picture frame. We visualize, we imagine that there's a frame, there's a window between me, the viewer, and the artwork. And then if the gaze, right, which is, we have to imagine, the gaze is looking outside, it's trying to break the picture frame. So it's, the picture frame is a term for us to describe the contents, that's whatever that's happening inside the painting. For example, his gaze is breaking, looking out of the picture frame to interact with the viewer. His first maybe he's a little bit off to the left, so he's maybe looking at his own poem that says about something similar to what I said to you at the very beginning of this lecture, that chaos, an individual. And actually you have an excerpt and translation of excerpt on your textbook. It says about the first 3 lines right here. It says, "In this vast world, what lies before my eyes?" I don't know what's going on. I smile, right? I still keep a very positive attitude, right? So he says, "I smile and bow and go around flattering people to extend connections, but aware of what affairs." I try to do a lot of things, but all things to me are very new. For what affairs? I don't know. I'm in the world of confusion myself. And then the last sentence, it says, "In this great confusion," right here, "in this great confusion, what is there to hold on to and rely on?" What is there to hold on to and rely on in this ever-changing cityscape of Shanghai? Now we look at the self-portrait. This guy right here. My question is, do you see that confusion in this? what's the point, right, of doing this self-portrait? We're going back to that question. At first sight, if I can express, just share a little bit of my own feeling about this painting. At first sight, this is pretty fashionable, I would say. This is pretty hip-hop, right? The very loose rope. Like trousers as well. The rope really loose to pair with that skinny body. This is oversized for him. I would say this is a hip-hop style. But if you look closer, we see the gaze is so determined, right? Looking out. The hands clenched, pretty tensed up, right? He's not relaxed. He's not trying to, be like a hip-hop, that kind of person, to relax, be chill, if you like. He's tensed up. He's not in the mode of kind of like joking. He's pretty serious. And that seriousness is not just the gazes. You see the gazes is very sharp, right? And the rope creases. You see the creases, the way he uses to. There's a lot of cuts, a lot of changing directions immediately, right? Changing directions. It's not so soft if you pay attention to the thick and dark, angular shape of the brushworks. So the brushworks is also very sharp. The rope creases is sharp. Calligraphic brushwork is really sharp. So why is always sharp, that sharp, this sharp? To express his sharp attitude, right? To express this is not trying to cooperate with anybody, almost a confrontational manner in front of the confusion. As a way to claim his own individuality. In this confusion, I am a person. And you notice this determined, right? Speaking of the determined gaze, you see this thick, in the middle, thick vertical lines of the pants. It almost rises upwards. Give you an illusion that meets his hands right there, giving you that impression that they rest on a sword, that the hands resting on a sword, holding on something, ready to fight. Right. Literally, he's ready to fight because he's actually inscripted into the army to fight against the rebellion at the time. So he's a literati, but be called into the army to fight in the war, and then come back out to be the professional painter again. It's pretty ups and downs, fluctuating career. And this is a share, I would say, destiny with the city that he was active in, Shanghai. That is Shanghai. And very lastly, and most importantly, speaking of that confusion, one very important thing, and I have it on this notes right here, is the juxtaposition of two styles, which we've never seen before at this time. What do I mean by juxtaposition? Okay, there are two major parts in this self-portrait right here. One is the body, the torso. We see the other part is the rope, the shoes, the trousers. And they're of different styles. This, thanks to the photography, the technology of photography that was imported into China, was used into China, that the studios that was established in Shanghai, the influence is obvious here because it uses, the Xiong in this case, uses the very meticulously light and shadow, the naturalism that you would get in photographs, or the naturalism that was honored for a long time in Western artistic tradition. And we see that tradition being imported, right? Literally imported into the figure, in this case, into the face and the upper torso of Ren Xiong's self-portrait. That is not anything the Chinese tradition would honor, right? Remember the literati painting. Remember the southern school, the northern school. None of those schools required you to be photographic, right? It creates all kinds of, right? All those schools, they honor the brushworks, the expressive brushworks, to create that kind of illusion. But here, it's the light and shadow, it's the illusion of the space, it's the illusion of the linear perspective from the Western world onto this painting right here. Photographic naturalism, light and shadow on the torso, pretty inventive in a Chinese eye right here. The rope, however, is very angular, thick brushworks, and employs this abstract and expressive brushworks that is more akin to the Chinese tradition, to the Chinese water and ink painting tradition. So something Chinese, something Western, mixed together in a big pot. That is the confusion that challenged or that benefited Shanghai at the time, and that is that challenge that is also the challenge that challenged Ren Xiong, a professional painter at the time. So I'll leave you with this question. Artists, right? Speaking of artists, they seems to be, we've been talking about it for a long time, as the artist seems to be either they be employed by court, either they be on their own, live their own life, express their literati idealism. For Ren Xiong, what's his goal? What is his aim? What is his intent here by producing this self-portrait? Maybe the answer lies in that awareness of the modernity. Maybe that answer lies in what we call art for art's sake. Art as a way, as a conduit to express one's own individualistic thought and feeling. Maybe that answer has to do with the modernity that met this faltering, this confused country we call China, or Shanghai, or Ren Xiong.